The girls absolutely adored the cubs. Bebe asked Yu Hao if it was going to be easy to raise them. He told him he didn't know and that he would have to ask the Beast Arena teacher about it. At night, all of them ate and drank together. They hadn't enjoyed themselves like this for a long time, so it was a breath of fresh air for them as well. Once the gathering was over, Ziwen called Yu Hao to his room to talk. He wanted to know if he had decided the path he was going to take in the future. It seemed to him like Yu Hao's heart was muddled. Yu Hao felt like he had been caught. He admitted that he simply couldn't give up on choosing either path. Ziwen reminded him that human capabilities had a limit. Even though he tried to hide this with his efforts, he wondered if he was still not tired of doing this. Yu Hao didn't know what to say. Ziwen advised him to take some time out for himself and think about the worst-case scenarios. If he didn't do so, he might accidentally exceed the limit, and as a result, his body would completely break down. He could see that deep down in his heart, he still wanted to be a spirit master. But he knew that he just couldn't leave everything behind like that. He was not asking him to give up on everything. He assured him that his research was definitely not going to be in vain. He was not actually telling him to give up on studying them, but rather to stop him from wasting his time trying to make them. Ziwen told him that if he really wanted to become a spirit master who stood at the top of the mainland, he had to try his utmost best. If he were to achieve his goal of standing at the top in the future, then he would personally create and customize a soul device for him. He explained that in the future, the person who would have the power to stand at the top of the mainland would be the one who achieved both the top level in cultivation and soul guides. It would become the peak of existence at all times. He asserted that this was the only reason he was here, and asked him if he wanted to be the one who would help him achieve this goal. Yu Hao made up his mind. He responded, saying that it would be his honor to work with him. Bebe was shocked to hear what had just happened. He could not believe that Yu Hao had told him he had just come looking for him. The person was known as Mo Xuan, and he resided in the inner courtyard. He inquired if he had used some kind of trick to bring him here. Yu Hao insisted that he hadn't done anything. Mo Xuan was the one who had come looking for him that morning and had expressed his interest in his all-terrain self-driving soul guide. He stated that Mo Xuan wanted to borrow and learn how to use it from him, but before he had the chance to lend it, he suddenly requested that he wanted to join the Tang sect before borrowing it. Bebe felt like it was impossible. He asked him if he knew what Mo Xuan was known as in the inner courtyard. He was known as the Lord of War, and he could support 100,000 people at the same time using just his aura. Yu Hao exclaimed that it was not physically possible. Bebe assured him that he too had thought like that when he had first heard about it. Yet he couldn't deny the fact because he had heard it directly from his grandfather. He suggested that they should get going quickly, since they didn't want to make him wait for too long. They met up with Mo Xuan, who declared that he was voluntarily joining the Tang sect right there and then. He was going to obey the rules and hereby bring only glory to the Tang sect. He was also willing to protect the Tang sect with his life and swore it, stating that the heavens may severe him if he were to betray them. Bebe assured him that he didn't need to swear like that. He hugged him, saying that they were brothers from now on. He also formally welcomed him to the sect. Mo Xuan told him that he would address him as his senior from now on, but Bebe rejected his request. He asked him to just call him by his name and informed Yu Hao that he could start teaching Mo Xuan about the soul guide now. He also advised Mo Xuan to learn some of the Tang sect skills as well, handing him a book that contained some of his personal notes. He told him that he could return it when he had finished reading. This was a moment of pride for them. Their Tang sect had grown a bit bigger now. Just then, Bebe heard a noise coming from the arena and pointed out that it seemed quite lively today. He told Yu Hao they should go and check what was going on inside. Upon entering, Yu Hao noticed that it was brother Kaitu and Xiao Xiao who were fighting. It seemed like they still couldn't stand each other, though it was still a little too early. Suddenly, someone else caught his eye. Yuichen was enthusiastically watching the match. Right at that moment, he began walking towards Yu Hao. This was not good since he didn't want to be caught up in another fight. Before Yukin could say anything, he began screaming at him, telling him to not even think about it. He started making excuses, saying that he had chatted with teacher Ziwen last night and was really tired right now, so it wouldn't even count even if he won. He pointed him towards Bebe, saying that he may have thought that he was the greatest here, but his senior brother next to him had powers no less than the girl he had faced yesterday. Bebe felt somehow betrayed. Yuchen made his way towards Bebe and immediately challenged him to a duel. Bebe knew he had no choice but to accept it. He asked him to wait until at least the first duel was over. The red-haired student overheard their conversation and immediately announced that he wanted to give up, stating that he didn't want to fight anymore. His opponent, a woman named Jing, was disappointed and told him that he wasn't playing fair. She asked him why he was not even trying to attack her even once. He insisted that all he had was a shield, and there was no way he could attack with something like that. She accepted his resignation, but told him that she would challenge him again some other day. It was finally time for Yukin and Bebe to start their match. Without wasting a moment, Beibei activated his ability, Blue Tyrant Dragon Transformation. Beibei did the same and pulled out his prized sword. Yu Hao wondered if he had actually mastered the power of the Judgment Sword with only his sword intent. This too, in just a single day, seemed too much. Yueqin activated his domain, Solitary Sword, and took his fighting stance. Beibei made the first move and charged at him, his claw ready to rip him to shreds. Yueqin didn't seem too worried about it, his eyes closed and a calm expression on his face. All of a sudden, he opened them and took a swing at the claw. The two forces collided. In the blink of an eye, Beibei's claw had been defeated. The sword swing didn't stop there and kept hurtling towards him. This was not looking good. Beibei knew it was too late to evade now. In that case, he figured he had to give it his all. He put his arm in front of him and attempted to block the strike. The resulting explosion dissipated it, and it seemed like Yueqin had been put on the defensive. Beibei decided he wasn't going to hold back any longer and immediately rushed towards him. His dragon claw was at full power this time, but Yueqin seemed ready for it. A loud explosion erupted, and the red-haired kid wondered why Beibei had used his ultimate skill. Jean could not believe how powerful her senior was when the smoke settled. It turned out that both the fighters had suffered serious damage. Yueqin professed that it was his loss, but Beibei refused to accept it. He asserted that he had not completely lost. In terms of innovation, it was actually he who was the one to lose. The sword supposedly had a restraining effect on him, and if he got to use it the next time they fought again, he confessed that he might not be able to beat him. Yueqin was speechless and thanked him for the advice before taking his leave. He was also determined to work on it to improve. Before leaving, he took one look back at Yu Hao. Jing asked him if he had suffered any serious injuries. Hearing this, he simply smiled. He confessed that he had made the right decision by joining the Tang sect and admitted that he would be troubling them again to further advance his training. Yu Hao and the others were happy for him. It seemed like it didn't matter as to whatever there was in front of him. His eyes didn't seem to project anything other than swords. Beibei pointed out that this was what made him terrifying. His talent and love for the swords could take him to an unimaginable level. The red-haired student pointed out that he had still used his strongest skill against a person like him and wondered if that wasn't shameful enough for him. Beibei demanded him to stop annoying him and told him to try and experience it for himself before calling out others. He wanted to see how he would react the next time he got stabbed by Yueqin's sword intent. Beibei decided he would take his leave along with Sanshi to practice among themselves. The student wished them a safe journey back, and Yu Hao smacked him in the head for acting like an idiot. Later that night at home, Yu Hao asked Dong'er to sit down next to him so they could get started with their training. Dong'er took a minute before expressing that she wanted to first ask him about something. It felt to her as if Chuer's attitude towards him had been different today. Yu Hao stated that it had felt exactly the same for him. She explained that everyone who had closely watched her could tell that she was cold when she looked at others, but whenever she looked at him, her attitude would change to that of a soft and gentle woman. She concluded that Chuer might have fallen in love with him. Yu Hao tried to dismiss it, asking her if she still didn't believe him. He had already told her this before, that she was the only one in his heart. She told him that she believed him, but there was also a possibility that Chuer might try to take him by force. He had already seen how powerful she was. So as to avoid trouble in the future, she advised him to minimize his contact with her. Yu Hao pointed out that she looked so cute when she talked like that. She scolded him by his ear, asking him what he meant by that. He requested her to forgive him, saying he was wrong, and asked her if she couldn't just forget it. She demanded that he had to make less contact with Chuer and asked him if he understood. Intimidated, he immediately replied with a yes. The next morning, Beibei called both of them over, stating that they had to go and report to Lao. They had to inform him that all of them were going to represent the Tang sect in the upcoming tournament. Everyone had gathered at the headquarters, and it was time for them to get started with their meeting. Lao announced that they had received an official message from the organizing committee the previous day. The match system and the rules had been confirmed. The individual sects were also allowed to participate this time. He then asked them if they had all decided what they were going to do. Beibei assured him that they had already finalized it and announced that they were going to represent the Tang sect in this competition. Lao was impressed and told him if that was his choice, then he hoped they would all do their best. He also figured he should remind them that they wouldn't be getting any more help from the academy this time. They were to only rely on what they had. Beibei and Yu Hao accepted it. Lao then turned his attention towards teacher Shaija and told him that the 10 students in front of them were going to be representing the academy this time. He hoped that all of them could live up to the academy's expectations and bring them good results. He further asked Shaija to explain the rest of the rules to them. Shazi began running through their plan, announcing that the new team this time was going to be led under the leadership of Dong'er. The other team members who were participating included Dai Huabin, Zhu Lu, Ning Tian, Wu Feng, Xie Huan Yue, Chao Jinshuan, Zhou Xichen, Lan Sudan, and Lan Luo Luo. In addition to that, he also informed them that they were going to be holding a training arena in order to compare their powers against each other once they arrived at the venue. This would then be followed by a sparring match between the two teams. Joe walked over to Yu Hao and wondered if he was going to introduce them to the beauty next to him. The girl interrupted him, asking what there was that needed to be introduced. She couldn't believe that he was not able to recognize her, even though she had only changed her hairstyle and dress. Joe immediately realized who she was by her tone. It was none other than Dong'er. The two of them couldn't believe that she was a woman, and if she was Dong'er, then who was the other person on their team that looked like her? Joe was entirely confused by the situation and asked Yu Hao to explain what was going on. This confusion was also due to the fact that they hadn't attended the meeting earlier. Yu Hao confessed that it was true. She was indeed disguised as a boy earlier in order to keep a low profile, and he then proceeded to explain the rest of the story to them. Joe couldn't comprehend what was going on. He had assumed both of them were just inseparable friends. He asked Yu Hao if he already knew about this. It seemed to him like they both had some kind of special relationship. Dong'er instantly denied it, asking him what nonsense he was thinking. She explained that she had enrolled as a male student at that time because she was facing some problems. Yu Hao hadn't known about her at that time either. Joe had a smirk on his face, and in a sarcastic tone, said that he understood everything. He began making assumptions that they, Yu Hao and Dong'er, had done so much stuff together without realizing it. Dong'er was annoyed and ordered him to come and fight her one-on-one in the arena if he had the guts. She swore to change her name if she didn't beat him to a pulp. Joe professed that he wanted to do so, but he was not the one to decide, saying that it was their captain who decided the matchup. Chio'er wasted no time and told them they could go in for the first match then. This was perfect for Dong'er, and she told him they would now see each other at the arena later. Joe tried to cancel it, saying that he didn't mean to say that. The group reached the Shrek Academy training arena. A teacher announced that he would give both teams 10 minutes to prepare themselves and to decide their matchup order.